Hello everybody, this is another Hot Wheels collector video. Today we are looking at the 62 Corvette. This is actually a brand new recolour for the 2023 N case and has been painted in a gunmetal grey colour. This car features in the Then and Now series and is number 5 out of 10 in that set, and has been paired up with the Corvette C706, also painted in gunmetal grey. I'll quickly mention that I picked this car up from a pretty local ASDA store at the price of £2.40. That's a high price in the UK, and that'll sound absolutely ridiculous to any Americans watching, but that is kind of the standard price here in the UK. The cheapest you will get is £1.50. It was very expensive, but I was willing to pay that because this car was brand new when I bought it. I actually bought it about 3 weeks ago, so I've had this one for a little while. I just haven't got around to opening it. But there you go, that's the story of where I found this thing. Now let me give you some facts about the real life car. So in real life, this car had a small block V8 engine. In the 1962 variant, it actually was a 5.4 litre, which actually did have more horsepower, and it was a new engine which was only used in the last 2 years of production of the C1. This engine had 340 horsepower and 344 pound-feet of torque, converted to 466 newton meters of torque. This car also had a top speed of 147 miles per hour, which converts to 237 kilometers per hour. This car was also rear-wheel drive, and when it was new, it costed $4,000, which was obviously in 1962. Now that is the equivalent to $40,700, and that converts to £33,500. Now then, the average modern value of this car in America is $96,300. That converts to £79,300. Anyways, that's it for the facts about this car. Now let's move on to the showcase of the Hot Wheels model. Okay, so before we actually do get into the showcase, I've got a few models off to the side which I actually want to bring in to this video. So first of all, we have this Corvette gasser here. The reason I want to bring this in is it's actually technically the same casting. There's only been a few modifications made to it, so the actual base of this gasser car is the exact same as this Corvette you see right here. There is no changes made, even though this is a brand new casting for last year, and this one is from all the way in 2008. That shows how well this car has actually held up throughout them years. It also shows that the Hot Wheels design team have no intentions of retooling this car, and honestly I don't really think it does need a retool. It still looks phenomenal in my opinion, of course. And the next car I want to bring in is this one. The reason why I'm bringing this car in is this is the car it is paired up with in the Then and Now series. This is the C706, which also of course features in this year's Then and Now series, and is painted in the exact same colour scheme, including those stripes, which are painted in a lighter grey. Looks phenomenal. I love these two cars placed next to each other. That's it for the showing of different cars that kind of relate to this car. Now let's move on to the actual showcase of the Hot Wheels model. Alright, so kicking off this showcase, we'll first of all take a look at the side of this car, and I'll first of all mention the wheel choice on this thing. So this car is rolling on the 5-spoke wheels, which have been painted in black with a chrome lip. I really do like that chrome lip because it actually does match things like the side skirts as well as the rear bumpers, which are created through the chrome base plastic. As for the actual colour of this car, it is all painted in a gunmetal grey colour, as I've already mentioned. And as for the tamper work on the side of this thing, there's quite a decent amount of it. First of all, we have the racing number 2. The actual number itself is done in black tampo, and then it has a white circle around it, which is also tampoed on there. You can also see the Hot Wheels logo does feature on this side as well, tampoed in a light grey colour. And finally, you can see the Corvette badge has also been tampoed on this car near the front fender. As for the actual metal casting itself, we do have a few things in it. So first of all, I will mention that the side skirt of this car is created through the chrome base plastic. You can also see the door handle of this car features in the metal casting, and you can also see the front windows on this car are actually wound down on this thing. Finally, I will mention that there are no wing mirrors on this car at all, including on this side, although it's actually okay that this side did not have a wing mirror, because according to the card art, which you can see just there, only the left side of the car would have featured a wing mirror. So technically this is actually accurate to the real life car that they were going for on this. Anyways, that's really it for the side of this car. The only other thing that does feature is in the metal casting itself as well. So we do have a few body lines on this car as well, as I've said, in the metal casting, and those run all the way from the front fender area, and they're kind of in an oval shape, making this car look a lot more accurate to the real life counterpart of it. Anyways, that's it for the side of this car. Now let's move on to the front of this thing. Alright, and taking a look at the front of this car, there's actually no tamper work on the front bumper of this car. You can see the headlights do actually feature in the metal casting itself, but they do not receive any tamper work. You could add your own details easily though using Sharpie or acrylic paint. You can also see the grille of this car as well as the front bumper section of this car is all created through the chrome base plastic. Anyways, that's really it for the front of this car. The only few things that I do want to mention is on the actual hood itself. There are actually 4 stripes on the hood of this car, 2 smaller ones and 2 larger ones, and those are tampoed in a silverish grey tampo. You can also see there is a little bit of detail in the metal casting itself, and those are just in the form of body lines on the car, accurate to the real life car. Really do like the look of those, and you can actually see them on the card art there as well. Anyways, that's it for the front of this thing. Now let's move on to the next side of this car. Alright, and taking a look at this side of the car, it's pretty much the same as the previous. The only thing that actually does change on this side is the fuel filler cap does feature in the metal casting on this side. Anyways, the rest of this car is the exact same as the previous, so I'm not going to bore you on this. You can obviously pause the video here and have a look for yourself if you're looking for something specific. If not, let's move on to the rear, but hang on. Before we do, let me mention the interior colour. I'm just going to lift the camera up slightly so you can see it a bit better. The interior is done in a cream colour. I do actually quite like that interior colour, although it is quite random on this car as there is no cream featured anywhere else on this car, but it is pretty period correct. Anyways, now on to the rear of the car. Alright, and taking a look at the rear of this car, there is no tamper work on the actual rear of this car, but there are a few details in the metal casting, so let's get straight into it. First of all, we have the rear light, which as I've said, don't receive any tamper work, but you could easily add your own details using Sharpie or acrylic paints. I will also mention that the rear bumper of this car is created through the chrome base plastic, and you can also see the license plate holder also does feature in that chrome base plastic rear bumper section. You could easily add your own details to that license plate using something like a permanent sticker. The final bit of detail we do see from the rear of this car is that continuation of those 4 stripes painted in a silverish grey, and you can also see the trunk release button also features in the metal casting itself here. Anyways, that's really it for the rear of this car. Now let's move on to the top of this thing. Alright, and finally taking a look at the top of this thing. So there really isn't much else that I haven't already mentioned, but the things that I haven't mentioned is first of all, this casting does not feature any windshield wipers unfortunately. It's kind of understandable since this casting is so old, but it definitely would have been nice to see that small detail. Even though, in my own opinions that I do have, I'm going to give this car the benefit of the doubt for that. In the actual end review score, I am going to have to reduce my final score just because of this, because technically it's still a detail that is missing unfortunately on this model. And a final thing I do want to mention on the top of this car is you can see there are 2 pinstripes featuring on the hood section of this car. So those pinstripes run all the way from kind of the headlight area all the way to pretty much the windshield of this car, and those are meant to actually represent the trim of this car, which would have been done in a chrome colour in real life. Those pinstripes are painted in a silver colour because that's the closest that Hot Wheels can get in terms of tamper work. And that is really it for the top of this thing. I don't think I've missed anything else. Obviously those stripes continue onto the roof of the car as well. And yeah, that's really it for the top of this thing. And that is also it for my showcase of this car. So now let's move on to my final thoughts and review on this thing. Alright, and now it's time for my final thoughts and review on this car. I actually think this casting is surprisingly good for today's standards. It's not that bad to be honest. There are a few things which I'm not super keen on. First of all, I think the wheels are very tucked into the actual car itself. I'm not a fan of that look, and when I've been looking on pictures on Google of this car, the wheels definitely don't seem to be that tucked into the car. So that is one thing which is dated about this car. Another thing that would have been nice is to have had 2 of the same size wheel on this car. You will notice that the front wheels are actually smaller than the rear wheels. It does add to that weird effect that Hot Wheels cars from about this period used to do. A lot of the modern Hot Wheels cars now have 2 of the same wheel size wheels, but on this one it doesn't. It has 1 smaller one and 1 larger one. Those are 2 minor improvements which obviously a retool could fix, but honestly it's not that bad, and I definitely don't think it desperately needs a retool. It definitely holds up pretty well to today's standards. I really do like the colour on this thing, and it's just done quite nicely to be honest. Another thing that would have been nice to have seen is the wing mirror on the left side of the car being portrayed as well. That doesn't feature there. They could have easily done that with like a little blob of metal, but again, that casting is quite old, so I will sort of forgive that personally, but obviously it's going to affect my score because I'm going to give you a realistic score on everything this car has to offer, and obviously I want to be fair with that score against other cars. So anyways, yeah, that really does lead me on to my score. Oh, before we do, I'm going to tell you, I really do like the tamper work though. The stripes look great on this car, and I really do like the racing number on the side. I think it just makes it look so unique and cool, to be honest. Now it is time for my score then. So, when I move this car out of 10, it's going to be receiving a pretty solid, especially for its age, 8 out of 10. I quite like this thing, and there's just those few improvements. If they were made, this would be a great one. It is still a great one, and I highly recommend you pick it up if you do see it in stores, but it's definitely not near the top of my list in terms of favourite cars, unfortunately, even though it is very well executed still. Anyways, that's it for this video, so if you guys did enjoy, make sure you like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and also press that notification bell so you're not missing new uploads. Remember, you can also share this video with any friends, family, and any groups who may be interested, but remember, don't feel pressured to if you don't feel like you have anybody who may be interested. You watching this video all the way to the end means so much to me, and I really do thank you for making it all the way up until this point. But anyways, that is it for this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye everyone.